What it do? Dream Team, it's your boy Neal back with another reaction video, guys. Here we are with 9 reasons Australia is better than America. Before we dive in, guys, make sure you subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell, hit a video a thumbs up so it gets suggested. Social media, Patreon, all up top. You can subscribe to any of it. Put all the links in the description. All you gotta do is hit the link, follow me, talk to me, human. I talk back. If you got a favorite video suggestion, you can subscribe to Patreon and drop it in the comment section. What we got?
G'day guys, welcome back to the channel.
G'day.
My name's Kaitlyn and I'm an American learning to live down under here in beautiful Sydney, Australia. I've been in Australia for over 6 months. I've been in Australia before. I've been dating an Aussie for over 2.5 years now.
Hey.
I know quite a bit about Australia that a lot of Americans just don't know. And there are some things that Australia just does so much better than America. So, but we're not talking about those types of videos where we talk about really controversial topics like gun laws. This isn't going to get into how tipping is annoying. No, I think we could do a lot better than that here on this channel. So grab a bicky, grab a cuppa, and let's see what things Australia does so much better than America.
Let me know.
One thing Australia does so much better is having staged driver's licenses over here in Australia.
What do you mean?
You have your L plates, you have 2 different types of P plates that you have to be on, and overall it takes I think about 2 years on average in order to go from your learners up to a full license over here in Australia. Over in the States it's a little bit hard to measure because every state is different, but overall the states don't have this kind of tiered system. You have to go get a knowledge test done. In my state of Pennsylvania, at 15 and a half, think about how mature everybody is at that age. You can go get a written test done and then get your learner's permit, and then you have to clock in so many hours with an experienced licensed driver who I think has to be over the age of 21. They have to be in the car with you while you're practicing. And then at 16, I know a couple people who've gone on their 16th birthday to go get a full driver's license.
Yeah.
Now in Pennsylvania, they do have the.
It says mostly full license. There are limits on passengers and nighttime driving until 18.
Where they print the license is actually vertical. It's not a regular horizontal license if you're under the age of 21. But that's it. Technically, it's 16. You have a full license. You can do whatever you want, whatever speed limit you want. You're not limited the way you are on L and P plates over here in Australia. Having your L's over here in Australia is really similar to having your learner's permit, but having different color P plates, green and red, show not only that you have a more inexperienced driver in the car most likely, but it also shows that this person doesn't quite know what they're doing on the road yet. They have to go a little bit slower. They have a slightly different set of rules that they have to follow. And because this is displayed on the outside of cars over here in Australia, everybody kind of knows who the inexperienced drivers are. If you're coming up to somebody who has the red P plates on, chances are you're going to know that they're going slower. You're going to try to find some way to get around them when you can. It's just one of those things that you get used to seeing over here in Australia and think, why doesn't America have something like that? Because unless you're in a car that has one of those big giant learning to drive signs, you have no idea if the person in front of you is an experienced driver who's been doing this for 40 years or a teenager who got their license yesterday. So having staged driver's licenses is something that Australia just does better than America. So this next one,
I'll agree with you on that point, because that honestly just makes so much sense. And that's a great way, like she said, for surrounding drivers to tell, okay, this is an experienced driver, this is an inexperienced driver. If they're going slow, let me try to find a way around them. Like in America, we should have that, but we don't have that. So like you said, we don't know who's driving, and we get frustrated or upset, and we're honking our horns. I don't do this, I'm just saying. We're honking our horns at, and this may just be a person just getting their permit, maybe a person just getting their license, like they're inexperienced. And honking their horns and all that, just building up their anxiety and scaring them even more. And so she makes a great point. Why don't we do this? This is good. I really like that system.
Driver's licenses is something that Australia just does better than America. So this next one hurt my soul a little bit when I heard about this. This is the HECS-HELP. So I don't know if it's HEX help if you actually shorten them that way or if you say it out loud. I'm trying to find a few videos on it. I'm having trouble with that. But
we got?
we'll just call it HEX and HELP for this because I assume that that's how it's pronounced. So HEX or HELP loans from the government compared to American student loans. So I've had horror stories about American student loans. When I first got out of school, I was about $80,000 in debt before you add on the interest. And before I had consolidated.
What school did you go to? Nah, but I was like 30. Sheesh. That's still a lot, Neal. But 80, my God. I can't imagine me at 80,000 in debt.
$1,000 in debt before you add on the interest. And before I had consolidated my loans, at one point I had 5 different student loans I was paying with interest from 6% to 10.5%. From my very first job out of college, 60% of my take-home pay was going to my student loans. Luckily, I was living with my parents at the time, or there would have been literally no way I could afford anything.
I still would have hated work. Oh my God, 60% of my check. I don't even want to work. If you're gonna take 60% of my check, I don't even want to work at that point. Like, no. That's no.
There would have been literally no way I could afford anything. Even when I consolidated my loans, it was still a huge chunk of my paycheck that was going to this every single month. And of course, if you miss so much as one payment, they tack on like a $100 to $200 late fee on top of the following month, and it just keeps adding up and adding up. And if you're just paying the minimum and think you're going to be able to pay off your student loan in 10 years, I know so many people who have made the minimum payments and are still struggling 5-10 years after getting out of school. It's almost impossible to get a mortgage, but it's so easy for kids who don't even have a credit score yet to take out $100,000 in student loans over in the States. And on top of that, this isn't automatically taken out of your paycheck. You do have to remember, you can of course do the auto payments that are pretty common nowadays with most student loan companies over in the States. But either way, you do have to remember and make sure that is actually in your bank account on the day that it comes out. Over here in Australia, the government does help a lot with student loans through HEX and through HELP, and these payments are automatically taken out of your paycheck. You don't see it. Kind of similar to the way that taxes are taken out, you don't actually see them being taken out. That's all being done behind the scenes. And in America, you're expected to start paying your student loans about 3 months after you graduate, no matter what.
I think that changes.
Whether you have a job, whether you have a part-time job, whether you have a job that's only paying like $30,000 a year, it doesn't matter. You have to start paying it right away. Whereas over here in Australia, you don't have to start paying that back until you get a job that pays you over $40,000 a year. And again, all that is taken out automatically like taxes. You don't see it coming out of your bank account. You'll see it on your pay slip, on a statement. And I feel like Aussies don't have the same struggle with student loans. Yes, obviously, they're coming out of school with debt, but it's very different to the hassle of dealing with American student loans. Like, I feel like I could do a little 5-minute video just on the horrors of the student loan issues that I've had to deal with alone. I don't know if anybody would be interested in hearing about my student loan horror story. If you are, let me know in the comments down below. But I know so many Americans who in their 30s and in their 40s are still struggling with student loans from undergrad. Now this one might be a little bit more of a...
Dang, that was crazy. I think it's 6 months after you graduate now. It was 6 months after I graduated from college. But it may be different in different parts of the country. I'm not sure if that plays any role in it. But that's crazy. I can't imagine paying 5 loans at the same time, taking 60% of your check. My God. But yeah, if you pay the minimum amount, I honestly, with interest, I don't know if you'll ever pay it all back. If you just pay the minimum amount every time, I don't know if you'll ever pay it back. Due to COVID, we haven't had to pay any loans for a couple years. And Biden's trying to pass this student loan thing, which I'm praying to God gets passed. But there's so many people opposed to it. And so now don't know if it's going to go through or not. But if it does, that knocks off $20,000 of my student loans, which will be perfect. All right, but keep going. My bad. But yeah, this system sounds better where you don't have to start paying back till you get a job that pays you over $40,000 a year. Yes, because now you can still afford to live while paying student loans. Australia, y'all doing it right over there.
It's down below, but I know so many Americans who in their 30s and in their 40s are still struggling with student loans from undergrad. Now this one might be a little bit more of a common one, but that is having paid leave, paid holidays, paid sick time, more public holidays. Over here in Australia, I've already had like 5 public holidays come and go. And besides that, I've already had to take sick leave. I had to take a day off for funeral leave over here. And I never felt guilty having to take a day off over here. I remember over in the States, one of my older managers, like she was one of the office managers. She wasn't an attorney in the law firm or anything like that. She was very much a paper pusher. Didn't get along with a lot of people in the office. She gave me such a hard time for taking half a day off on a Friday to go help my mom 2 hours over in Jersey to help get ready for a funeral for my great aunt who passed away. Like, she had me sobbing in tears. Like, it was the worst thing ever that a legal secretary was taking half of a Friday off in order to go help her mom get ready for a funeral. And I feel like so many Americans have run into a boss, a manager, somebody who has done something like that where they feel so guilty about taking time off that technically they've earned, that is their actual right to use. And there might be a couple bosses like that over here in Australia, but I haven't really heard anybody complain about bosses who do that unless maybe you're a casual employee. But even in casual employees, you're not getting this full paid time anyway. Like over here in Australia, I think it's expected that you use your holiday time, that you plan for it. If you need sick leave, if you have sick time, take it. Don't come into the office with a cold, with the flu. Like, if you're sick, you're supposed to stay home over here in Australia. If you're in America, you could be practically on your deathbed, but you're still expected to go into the office and make sure that you're ready to answer phones and answer emails at the drop of a hat. I've said this in videos before that Australia has so much more of a work to live, not live to work mentality. And that definitely shows with paid sick time, paid holiday leave. Granted, we have no holidays actually planned for the rest of the year, but it's nice to know that the time is actually there if we want to go spend 2 weeks over in the States to see family, if we want to go to Hawaii for a week, if we want to go to Bali for a week. It's so reassuring to know that that extra time is there and that you're not going to be pressured to ignore it and leave it on the table and let it roll over into the next year or completely disappear. I don't know what it is.
I don't think I've ever had a boss like that, but I watch these videos and you see so many stories of a lot of Americans like who just have these bosses who like either don't give them time off, or when they do like give them time off, try to make them feel guilty about it, or all of these different things. And like you can imagine, it'd be so frustrating working for a company like that or working for a job like that. I know at one of my jobs, like my grandma I was going to my grandma's funeral. And like I told him, he said after it was like a week later, he said, "Oh, I didn't know it was your grandma's funeral. I wouldn't have made you work." Like no, like literally, I said like, "Hey, I'm not gonna be here. Like I won't be here for the beginning because I have to go to my grandma's funeral, and I can come for the end of it." And I'm thinking that he's gonna just be like, "No, like go ahead, take the day off." Like no, he's like, "All right, well, make sure you're there by this time then." And I'm like, "Dang!" Like. So I literally, grandma's funeral, I didn't really get to watch it like put into the ground, but I got to go for like the funeral ceremony, like where you all meet up and everybody talks about her and everything, and and then they're putting it in a car that didn't take her to her funeral site. I didn't get to go to see her be put in the ground to the funeral site because I had to hurry up and leave for work. And so I understand what she's saying, and I love that she said they're encouraged to take time off. They're encouraged to take your holiday. Like, if you're sick, do not come in. Don't come into this office. If you're sick over here, yes, you still go to work. She's speaking facts.
Let it roll over into the next year or completely disappear. I don't know what it is, but vegetables over here taste like vegetables and fruit tastes like fruit. It doesn't all taste condensed and watered.
I don't like veggies, but I will eat some fruits.
Down like a lot of the fruits and veggies do over in the States. Unless you're buying that really expensive organic produce over in the States, a lot of the food quality is just terrible over there. Whereas over here, it's almost difficult to explain to people back home just how different the meat tastes over here, how different fruits and veggies taste. The food quality over here in Australia is just so much better than it is in America. And I'm not talking about McDonald's where a French fry has a list of like 20 ingredients. I'm not talking about processed chips and things like that. I'm talking about fresh, natural food. Overall, the Australian government has such higher quality for food standards over here, which I think is one of the reasons why I've actually started liking seafood over here. Not just that I'm having it cooked well, but it's just fresher. It tastes better. And overall, even though I haven't had the healthiest lifestyle since moving over here to Australia, overall, I do feel healthier in general. And I think part of that is just because of the diet that I've had over here. If we get a chicken fillet, which is what we call chicken breast over in the States, and chicken breast over here are like two fillets combined. Like the chicken breasts aren't these massive things. Like a chicken like fillet breast over in the States is probably about that big. I'm not exaggerating. I've bought them like that regularly.
She's not lying. She said they're about that size. She is not lying.
Probably about that big. I'm not exaggerating. I've bought them like that regularly. Yes. Whereas over here, like they're smaller. You do get a little bit less, but it's not pumped full of hormones and God knows what else. It's flavorful. It tastes like chicken. It doesn't taste like a generic white meat. It's so tough to explain unless you've had it in both countries. But the food over here in Australia is just such a better quality than it is over in the States. Now, this one you'll probably see on a...
Yeah, I would definitely say that I can't give an opinion on that because I've never eaten food outside of the U.S. And the food that I eat, I feel like it's pretty, like, it tastes good to me. I don't know. And like I feel, I used to feel, I guess, a little unhealthier, but that's because my diet was unhealthy. I stuck to a healthier diet, and I feel great every day. But like she said, it's hard to explain unless you've eaten foods from in your country and over there. And I've only eaten American foods, and so I don't understand the food quality difference. But I want to understand.
It's just such a better quality than it is over in the States. Now, this one you'll probably see on a couple of lists, but having the GST or sales taxes already added into the price over here is so much more convenient. I think I was so used to in the States having to think of, okay, at least put an extra 10% on top of that for whatever the sales tax is going to be. Some places it's 6%, some places it's 8%. You go to places like Delaware, there's no tax, but I didn't live close enough to Delaware to ever really go there. Whereas over here in Australia, I don't have to worry about that. If a tag says it's $19, it's $19. If I want to buy a sweater and it's $25, it's $25. It's over in the States and it says $25. And in my head, I'm going, okay, so take an extra $2.50 just to be sure. So it's probably going to be like $27.50 when you actually get to the register, maybe a little bit less. All of this extra like math and jumbling around in my head just to see what the sales tax might be or is going to be when I get to the register. I feel like it's such an unnecessary stress that a lot of stores put on customers over in the States. I don't see why it isn't more regulated, that the sales tax is already included. You're not going to have extra taxes added on when you get to the register. Like, buying clothes is one thing, but when you're going grocery shopping in the States, some food isn't taxed. Some paper products aren't taxed, and then some of it is, and some of it has extra taxes on top of it. Like where I was from in Philly, we actually had what they called a soda tax. So any sodas or juices, anything that really had high sugar content in it was even more taxed on top of it. It's so confusing over in the States. I don't know why it isn't like it is over here, where what it says on the price tag is what you actually pay at the register. It's so much more convenient. So if you guys are liking this so far, hit the like and subscribe button down below to join our little Amer-Australian family. I post on Mondays and normally Thursdays about the differences between American and Australian culture and the overall process of learning to live down under. This next one is...
I don't understand the price tag, dude. I've seen a different country. I've watched videos on different countries who all have their tax already added into the price tag. I don't understand why we add it at the register. I think that's dumb. I agree with her completely. Put whatever I'm going to pay, just put it on the price tag so I know exactly what I'm going to pay. Like, don't have me trying to guess and do math about what taxes is getting added on. Put it on the price tag.
Australian culture and the overall process of learning to live down under. This next one is kind of a mix of the actual structure, but also the mentality behind it, and that is TAFE. Over here in Australia, you can leave school at year 10. Once you're done year 10, you can leave. You're technically finished. It's kind of similar to having a GED over in the States.
Oh, wow.
You don't have to finish year 11, year 12. Most people who do are expected to go to uni at that point. Whereas over here in Australia, you have TAFE, which is kind of similar to trade schools over in the States. But here there are so many more options. In the States, you have the jobs where you really work with your hands, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, welders. You have some IT work, you have beauticians and cosmetology schools, and that's the bulk of trade schools over in the States. Over here, there's a similar structure, but there's even more available through TAFE. And on top of that, people aren't shamed for taking courses through TAFE over here. I know so many people who felt guilty or who felt like they were unworthy or something like that for going to trade schools over in the States. Really? Even some trade schools where you walked out and you had an associate's degree at the end of the program. Like over here in Australia, people think it's perfectly acceptable to go to TAFE, or if you go to uni, going part-time is considered pretty normal over here. If you're doing part-time over in the States, typically it's because you're a little bit older, you probably have kids, or you have a full-time job that you're trying to juggle around. I know people who are in their early 20s who had basically full-time jobs or who had part-time jobs where they would work 3, even 4 days a week and work uni around that. There wasn't this mentality that you had to block another 4 years of your life to go to another institution to get a bachelor's degree that's probably not even going to be in the field you end up working in anyway. Like, I can get into the field that I was in and why I left. Again, I might do that student loan horror video and tie that into it. Who knows? Let me know in the comments down below. But leaving school at year 10 and going into TAFE and going into a trade is so much more acceptable over here in Australia than it seems to be in the States. Like tradies and plumbers and electricians and whatnot seem so much more respected over here in Australia as well compared to the States. It's almost like if you had to work a trade, unless you actually own the business, then a lot of people almost seem to think that you were a failure in a lot of ways because you didn't go to college, you didn't go to uni, you don't have your own business, you're working for somebody else, even though they have a probably pretty well-paying and steady career. Now this one is still trips.
I think it's becoming more acceptable not going to college now because I feel like the technology and internet is like changing things drastically where it's like, know what I'm saying? Well, I'll just start a TikTok, I'll just start YouTube, I'll just start OnlyFans. I'll start, know what I'm saying? Like, you can do so much with technology now that, like, less people are going to college, I feel like. And less people, and it's socially acceptable. It's like, you don't want to go to college? Cool. Like, everybody do their own thing. College not for everyone. People are starting to understand that where it's not like, I think our parents kind of pushed our generation like into it because they felt like that was the way, and a lot of them didn't get the chance to go to college, so they felt like that was the way of being most successful is by going to college. And so we were raised like with school, parents, just our community drilling college. And so we thought college was important, where it's like anybody who didn't go to college we didn't understand because it was like we were told college is the key to being successful all our lives. Or now I think that message is actually starting to change over here. I completely agree with her. I mean, I feel like some professions are looked down upon over here, which baffles me. But they are starting to put more trades into like schools now. In the school, when I went to school, there was no trades in my high school. Now, like, you can get your beautician license in my high school, and there's a couple more different trades that you can do while in school, which I think is really awesome. We didn't have that option. It's starting to change slowly but surely, but I feel exactly what she's saying.
A probably pretty well-paying and steady career. Now this one, it still trips me up. I am still learning this, but I like that Australia has the metric system. And even though I'm not used to it, it still trips me up time and time again. I'm
sorry.
do overall like that it is consistent with like 98% of the rest of the world. I remember talking with a couple of my colleagues. Most of them are in Australia. Some of them came from different countries as well. My manager is actually from Portugal. But overall, they were talking about the weather and talking about how, oh, it's going to be 16 degrees today. It's so chilly. I'm freezing cold. And I'm sitting here thinking 16 degrees. How is it not snowing outside? That's absolutely...
I swear to
oh,
God.
no, wait. I'm thinking 16 degrees Fahrenheit, not 16 degrees Celsius. And this has happened so many times, especially when it comes to weather and when it comes to distance. If somebody says something is 100 kilometers away, and yes, I know, I keep saying kilometers instead of kilometers. It's one of those things that's probably going to take a little while to fade out, one of those accent things. But if something's 100 kilometers away, in my head, I automatically translate that to 100 miles, whereas 100 kilometers would actually be like 60 miles. I'm still not completely used to the metric system. I'm getting better when it comes to things like the weather and baking and a little bit more with distance, but when it comes to measurements like fluid ounces and whatnot, I don't know the difference between a liter and a gallon and a cup and like 50 milliliters. I don't know. So I'm getting used to having different comparisons, different sizes, and a lot of people in my comments have been really nice, giving me ideas and suggestions to sort of get used to the difference. And overall, I'm so much better than I was 6 months ago when I first moved over here. But I do love that Australia has the metric system, whereas America is one of 3 countries that uses the imperial system. The drinking age over here in Australia.
We used to have to make the gallon man to learn this stuff, and I think there's like 8 ounces in a cup, and then 32 ounces in a liter, and in a gallon, it's like 128 ounces, if I'm right. But yeah, we used to have like a gallon man we would have to make. But yeah, the metric system, honestly, it does just make more sense. When I learned, I mean, of course, I'm stuck on the imperial system. I don't think I'll change just because I learned that my entire life. So it'd be harder to now change over. But when you compare them side by side, the metric system just makes more sense to use. I don't know why we even started the imperial system.
Of 3 countries that uses the imperial system. The drinking age over here in Australia, and this I know is really controversial for a lot of Americans, especially those between the ages of 18 and 21. But overall, I like that the drinking age over here is 18, not because, oh well, now you're younger and you can start doing really stupid stuff at an earlier age. No, I don't think that has anything to do with it. I personally think that if you're old enough to vote, if you're old enough to buy a pack of cigarettes, if you're old enough to sign up for the military and die for your country, you should be allowed to have a beer at a pub. And that is not something that you see over in the States. I know a lot of people who do think that the drinking age needs to be lowered, but with a lot of things going on in the States right now, that is not exactly a top priority for a lot of people. But overall, besides the inconveniences, besides the fact that statistically it doesn't stop people from drinking at a younger age, people tend to start around the same age over here in Australia and over in the States, unless they're strict rule followers and do actually wait until they're legal, which, to be honest, is a pretty small subsect of people over in both countries. But personally, I think if you're old enough to vote and you're old enough to sign up for the military, you should be old enough to drink and old enough to buy cigarettes. Why in the States is you can't wait until you're 21 to buy smokes, but you have to wait till you're 21 to drink. I think if that was a little bit more consistent with vices, that might make a little bit more sense, but even then, it still doesn't. 18, it's just, at 18, you're a legal adult across the board. Just leave it at that. It makes so much more sense. And finally,
they actually changed that to for the cigarette thing. For tobacco products, you now have to be 21 as well. Which, yeah, I'm with her. I think 18, because you're not stopping these kids from getting their hands on these products. But and I think, like, also, and I'm not saying like, oh, like, well, you're not stopping these people from being able to get their hands on this, but does that mean we shouldn't ban it? Or we should make them wait to get it? No, I'm not saying. I'm saying at 18, you're allowing them to vote. You're allowing them to go to the military, be able to risk their lives. But you say you're mature enough to do that, but you're not mature enough to go sit in a pub and drink alcohol. But you're not mature enough to buy tobacco products. But you're mature enough to make the decision to sacrifice your life. Like, that's crazy. I agree with her. 18, you're basically an adult at that point.
Across the board, just leave it at that. It makes so much more sense. And finally, this one was actually on my 2022 vision board, and I love that this is a thing over here in Australia, and that is superannuation. Over here in Australia, your employer pays 10% into a superannuation account for you, whether you work part-time, whether you work casual, whether you work full-time. Superannuation is still included in your job over here. Whereas over in the States, you're lucky if you open up a 401k and your company gives you a 5% match on whatever money you put in. You still have to take money out of your own paycheck in order to save up, and companies pretty much lowball you on that. I know a lot of companies who will pay like 4% and that's it, or like 4% at 50, or like 4% up to 8% of what you put in. So like you have to put in 8% in order to get the 4%. They do very different things at very different companies. So it's tough to say consistently across the board. But overall, if you have a 401k, you are contributing into your 401k and your employer is slightly, a little bit matching that. On top of that, you have to wait until you are fully vested. Otherwise, you might not get the money that your company put into your 401k. There are a lot of companies who you have to be with the company for 5 years, some even 10 years before you're considered fully vested in your 401k. And you actually get the money that the company put in there. If you're with the company for a year, let's say, and then you leave, you might get a small percentage of what they put in there, or you might not get any percentage of what the company put in there, just what you had contributed. Whereas over here in Australia, superannuation doesn't come out of your paycheck. It's something that's discussed when you're applying for a job, so you know, no matter what, you're definitely going to get the bare minimum, but I've seen some places do up to a 23% contribution into a superannuation. So even though there are issues going on right now with what might possibly be happening with superannuation and whatnot, government stuff, let's not get into that. Overall, I do love that superannuation is actually a built-in system over here in Australia. Yes, you have the option to invest and create like a sort of separate savings account. You can contribute extra into your super account. There are different ways that you can save up for retirement over here, but at least with the superannuation account, it is already money that is put aside for you when you reach retirement age.
I love
and admittedly, with inflation and whatnot, it's going to be really tough to live on for like 30 years if the regular retirement age is 65 and life expectancies keep going up. But that doesn't stop people from being able to contribute to their own retirement, to at least have something available when you reach retirement age. Whereas over in the States, I know a lot of people who didn't really start saving for retirement up until they reach like 55 and retirement age is 65. So how much are you really going to be able to save up in 10 years? So all in all, I do love that Australia has superannuation over here. I think it is a great system, something that I really, really wish would be implemented over in the States, even though I know that is never, ever going to happen. So that's it for this video, you guys. I hope you liked it. If you did, hit the like and subscribe button down below to join our little Australian family. I post on Mondays and normally Thursdays about the differences between American and Australian culture and the overall process of learning to live down under. My name's Kaitlyn, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.
Shout out Kayla. That was a dope video, and I love the superannuation idea. Yeah, I feel like over here the thought of retirement is like an afterthought nowadays. Like, a lot of people don't think about saving up for retirement because we don't believe we ever going to be able to retire anymore. But that's all we got for this one. You guys got a favorite video suggestion, you can subscribe to Patreon or drop it in the comment section. Subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell, give the video a thumbs up so it gets suggested. Patreon and social media all up top. You know, subscribe to any of it. Put all the links in the description. All you got to do is hit the link, follow me, talk to me. Love talking to you guys. You guys are the most incredible team on YouTube. It's your boy Neal. Out.